The transport shuttle drifted silently toward the ethery star vault, a crystalline ring-shaped station orbiting the distant gas giant Torialis. Nail Jorin sat stiffly in his seat, palms pressed to his knees. The room around him was too clean, too quiet, and too silver. Across from him, a protocol officer scanned a glowing screen with bored efficiency. "You've reviewed the customs?" she asked. Nail nodded, barely keeping the panic in his chest from spilling out through his throat. "Yes." "Bow at the second light marker. Don't speak until addressed. And, don't meet the Empress's gaze." The officer didn't smile. "Correct. That one especially. The gaze law is not symbolic. It is binding. Breaking it has irreversible effects." Nail looked down. "I know." But he didn't know. Not really. He'd read about it, how the Ethery's ruling class had developed a telepathic bond that activated only under intentional eye contact. The Bond Watch, they called it. No one from Terra had ever triggered it. And no one wanted to. Until, maybe, now. He was a linguist, not a soldier or ambassador. But someone had flagged him at the Terran language corps for his unusual fluency with ancient Ethery scripts. That earned him a one-way ticket to what should have been a peaceful negotiation post, decoding trade glyphs, advising Terran envoys. What he hadn't been told was that he'd be standing alone before the most powerful woman in a star system by the end of the first rotation. 2. The station interior gleamed like frozen time, everything glass and pulse and engineered light. Nail followed two Ethery guides through arched hallways filled with drifting particles that shimmered in the air. The silence was not oppressive, but sacred. The kind of silence you didn't dare interrupt. They reached the throne chamber without warning. The doors parted. And there she was. The Empress. She sat not on a throne, but on a flowing structure of liquid crystal that moved with her body, responding to her breath. She wore no crown. She didn't need one. Her presence filled the space like music without sound. Nail had seen photos, holograms. They hadn't prepared him. Her face was both sharp and soft, her skin pale with opalescent hues, and her eyes, those violet stars, seemed deeper than memory. He bowed quickly, not daring to look up. "Nail Jorin of Terra," a voice said, smooth, layered, and low. "You were not expected so soon." There was a schedule change, Nail managed. "Look at me." His breath caught. That wasn't part of the script. But it was a command. He hesitated. And then. He looked. One heartbeat. One breath. One gaze. And everything fractured. 3. Light bloomed behind his eyes. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the polished floor, gasping. Somewhere behind the ringing in his ears, alarms echoed softly, tones too high for human range, but heavy with dread. His body trembled, and then stilled. She stood. Her steps didn't echo, yet they pressed into the moment like thunder. "What have you done?" a voice whispered. It belonged to a court scholar, or perhaps one of the veiled aides that flanked the chamber. But it wasn't Nail who answered. It was her. He looked, the Empress said. The scholar hissed, "The bond watch is invoked. The law is clear. He must either unite or forget." Nail coughed, voice hoarse. "Unite, with you?" Her gaze didn't falter. "Yes. And if I don't?" A long silence. Then, she spoke again. "We will remove every trace of your name from your mind. Your body will be returned to your people, empty." Nail stared at the floor, unable to process. "I didn't mean to. It was a mistake." "There are no mistakes in the law," she replied. 4. They gave him a private chamber overlooking the gas giant's swirling clouds. No locks. No guards. No illusions either. Nail sat on the edge of a low, floating bed, clutching a cup of warm stimroot tea. It tasted like moss and cinnamon, and it didn't help. He had 3 cycles. 3 ethery days, which were longer than Terran days, of course, to decide whether to become bonded to an alien empress or have his identity erased. No pressure. He stared out the translucent wall. The stars beyond the planet seemed dimmer, as if watching him without judgment. The door shimmered. He turned. She walked in. No crown, no guards. Just her, cloaked in a soft violet robe. Her hair fell loose over one shoulder. "I wanted to see you," she said quietly. "Is this allowed?" Nail asked. Her mouth curved just slightly. "I am the Empress. I don't need permission." He gestured to the second seat. She sat. "You didn't mean to break the law," she said after a moment. "I know that." He laughed bitterly. "Does that make it better?" "No, it makes it harder." She stared at the swirling clouds. Her expression was calm, but something flickered in her eyes. "I was 7 when they taught me the Bond watch," she said softly. "My mother told me that if anyone ever looked directly into my eyes, I would be either married or alone forever." Nail said nothing. "And now," she continued, "someone has looked. And I am no longer allowed to pretend." He blinked. "Pretend what?" "That I am untouchable," she said. "That I will never feel what it means to belong to another." 5. They met again in the palace garden 2 cycles later. The artificial light simulated Torialis' pink dusk, casting everything in a warm blush. Glowing leaves floated through the air like gentle sparks. Nail waited near a translucent tree that pulsed with internal veins of light. He wore simple ceremonial robes. He didn't know why. Maybe respect. She approached from the other side. Today, she wore armor. Light, ceremonial, layered with old symbols etched in silver. It shimmered like frost. "You requested this meeting," she said. "I needed to talk," Nail replied. They sat beneath the glowing tree. "I've read your history." "Well, some of it. The old dialects are hard to parse. But the Bond watch, it wasn't always a punishment, was it?" She shook her head. "No, it began as a gift. A way for 2 minds to share space. But after the fall, after the first Empress died from heartbreak, it became protection." "From love," Nail said softly. "From hope," she corrected. "Hope destroys. Expectation corrupts. But duty survives." He turned to her, eyebrows furrowed. "And what about you? Do you just survive?" She didn't answer immediately. "I was raised to be a throne. Not a person. And now? Now, a person from a blue planet has looked into my eyes and seen me." Their eyes met again. And neither looked away. 6. That night, Nail dreamed. In the dream, he stood on a cliff of starlight. Below, time flowed like water. Faces, memories, languages. He heard her voice echoing, not in words, but feelings. Loneliness. Longing. And possibility. He awoke breathless. And he knew. He couldn't walk away. Not because he was forced. But because for the first time, he wasn't just a translator of words. He had become a translator of souls. 7. On the 3rd morning, they stood together again in the same chamber where it all began. He bowed, but slower this time. Deliberately. "Nail Jorin," the Empress said, "have you made your decision?" He straightened. "Yes." Whispers flitted across the chamber. "And?" He smiled gently. "I do not choose out of fear. I do not choose because of law. I choose because, when I looked into your eyes, I didn't see a ruler. I saw someone I wanted to understand." A pause. Then her voice softened. Then the bond watch is not a sentence. It is a beginning. They reached out, both placing their hands on the pulse crystal. A faint hum filled the air. A tendril of light arced between their foreheads. Memories passed between them in seconds, flashes of earth forests, Torialis storms, childhood laughter, royal loneliness. Then silence. When they opened their eyes, the chamber was glowing. No alarms. No panic. Just understanding. And something fragile. Something like love. The glass canopy of Celix curved over the horizon like a protective eye. Inside the moon dome, twilight shimmered in tones of blue and soft amber, bathing the city's crystalline towers in quiet light. Beneath the safety of the dome, poets whispered truth, lovers made vows they could never keep, and somewhere in the western sector, Leora Venn wrote her final poem for the man she could no longer reach. Your name fell from my mouth like gravity. And I forgot how to breathe without falling. She closed the journal and pressed her forehead to the smooth synthwood table. Silence pooled around her like a second skin. It had been 6 cycles since Israel was taken. He wasn't her husband. Not her bond mate. Not even officially her lover. But he had been hers, in quiet ways. In late-night conversations. In the way his hand had hovered near hers without touching. In the way he had looked at her like he wanted a future but didn't dare speak it aloud. And then, like a thunderclap from a silent sky, he had been summoned to Torialis orbit as part of the Terranetheri negotiations. She hadn't even gotten a proper goodbye. Just one final message, Leora. Something's happened. There's been a gaze bond. I'm being reassigned to witness tribunal. I don't know when, if, I'll return. Don't forget me. She hadn't. And now she was going after him. 2. Celix's underground transit tunnels were mostly quiet after fourth bell. Leora wore a long grey cloak with a poet's collar, a garment that gave her limited protection under the Artistic Guild Charter. Not enough to get her through official checkpoints, but enough to make people hesitate before asking too many questions. Her heart pounded as she passed the last biometric gate to the launch spire. The transport ship Veridine loomed in the docking station above like a mechanical dragon preparing to rise. The man waiting by the boarding stairs was tall, pale, and entirely too calm. You're late, he said. I had to avoid detection, she replied, lowering her hood. Did you get the override code? He nodded and handed her a glowing shard. This will get you inside the outer orbit, he said. After that, you're on your own. Leora hesitated. You knew him, didn't you? The man didn't answer immediately. His gaze flicked skyward. He spoke of you more than he realized, he said. Poetry, mostly. Leora's throat tightened. Thank you. Don't thank me. If you're caught, this didn't happen. It never does, she replied, stepping onto the ramp. 3. The journey to Torialis took less than one full rotation in jump arc, but for Leora it felt like a lifetime. She didn't sleep. Didn't eat. She stared out the viewport at the gas giant's swirling surface, watching its storms rage in silence. When she arrived at the outer docking field, her poet's clearance got her as far as the cultural archives. From there, she slipped into a maintenance corridor and followed an old blueprint Israel had once shown her on a scrap of napkin. In case you ever need to break in, he had said with a smile. She'd laughed at the time. Now, she used it. The inner sanctum of the ethery star vault glowed with soft silver light. Everything here pulsed with ceremonial intent. Every hallway was shaped by tradition. This place was not made for rebels. Or poets. And certainly not for lovers. She reached the Chamber of Echoes, a vast rotunda where political deliberations took place beneath a dome of sound-responsive crystal. This was where Israel had last been seen. As a Terranetheri interpreter, he was assigned to the Empress's inner council during the Gaze Bond fallout. A witness, but not neutral. Especially not to her. He had loved the Empress's translator once. The secret wasn't written anywhere, but Leora had seen it in his letters. Heard it in his silences. And now, she had to find him. Poet, a voice said sharply behind her. She turned. 2 guards approached, faces stern. You don't belong here, one of them said. She held out her clearance shard. I was invited by High Scholar Ilvan. Your name? Leora Ven. They scanned her. The device flickered, confused by the override. One guard frowned. You're not on the current manifest. Check the override again, she said coolly. I'm here to present my commission to the Empress's translation board. The guards hesitated. Just long enough. A door behind them slid open, and he stepped through. Asrel. His face was thinner, eyes tired, but unmistakably him. She's with me, he said, voice calm. Leora's heart stopped. And then beat again, faster than ever. 4. They walked in silence through a corridor made of polished obsidian. Their reflections glided beside them, ghost-like. He finally broke the silence. I told you not to come. I never listened well, she replied. He stopped, turning to face her. This is dangerous, Leora. You didn't answer my messages. I couldn't. You said, don't forget me. I didn't mean follow me into an Imperial security zone. Yes you did. They stared at each other. Neither spoke. Then he closed the space between them and touched her cheek. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. I know. And then he kissed her. Not out of passion. Out of necessity. Out of longing stretched too far across time and silence. When they pulled apart, she was trembling. Is it true? She asked. The gaze bond? He nodded. Not mine, he said. But I witnessed it. Terran linguist. Young. Scared. He looked at the Empress. She didn't look away. And now? They're locked in fate. The ritual begins in 2 days. Leora's breath caught. And you? His expression darkened. I think I'm next. 5. They met again that night, in the botanical atrium, one of the few places not monitored by Imperial sensors. It was a forest of glowing vines and silver-leaf trees, and it smelled like old storms and warm light. They sat by the water mirror, where ripples shimmered with memory projections, flashes of other couples who had sat here before. Lovers, conspirators, ghosts. If you stay, Asrel said, you'll be caught. If I leave, she said, you'll disappear. I can't protect you. You never needed to. He looked at her like she was both miracle and curse. Leora, if something happens, if I vanish, promise me something. No. Promise me you'll write about it. Tell them what happened. I'm tired of writing, she said. I want to live. 6. On the final day, the binding ceremony began in the Hall of Stars. Leora stood among the crowd, hidden beneath a diplomat's veil. She watched as the Terran named Nail approached the Empress. Watched as light bloomed between their foreheads. Watched as the chamber filled with silence and awe. But her eyes were not on them. They were on Asrel. Standing at the edge of the dais, recording every word. But his hand trembled. Something was wrong. A shadow moved behind him. A blade, glinting. Leora moved. She didn't think, she moved. Across the floor. Through the crowd. Toward the man she had loved in silence. And as the blade rose, she shouted. Asrel. He turned. Too late. But she was faster. She caught the assassin's arm mid-strike, and the two of them collapsed to the floor. Chaos erupted. Guards flooded the room. The ceremony paused. And Leora Ven was no longer invisible. 7. They questioned her for hours. Accused her of infiltration. Of sedition. Of emotional interference. But in the end, the Empress herself intervened. This woman, the Empress said, saved a man of honor. She acted out of truth. Not politics. And so, Leora was pardoned. Quietly. But not forgotten. Asriel visited her in the holding chamber the next night. You shouldn't have done that, he said. I know. But you did. I couldn't lose you. He sat beside her, silent for a moment. The Empress is changing, he said. The gaze bond didn't just connect her to Nail. It woke something in all of us. So what now? Leora asked. He reached for her hand. Now we tell our story. Orendil woke from the dream again, breathless, heart pounding, and head soaked in sweat. The same dream. A sky made of water, an obsidian tower falling in reverse, and a voice calling his name with impossible softness. Oren. Always that voice. Never a face. He sat up slowly in his bunk aboard the cargo hauler Dessa 9, rubbing his temples. The ship was still in low orbit above the wind-battered colony of Eras 9, where the nights howled like wolves and the air always smelled faintly of ash. The crew was quiet, mostly ex-soldiers turned smugglers. Oren didn't talk much. Not because he couldn't. Because something inside him had gone silent. Something big. Something human. He didn't know who he used to be before 4 years ago. All he remembered was waking in a recovery pod with no name, no memories, just a strange scar across the side of his neck and a datapad with his current identity, Oren Dill, private logistics contractor, assigned to border colony duties. No family. No lovers. No past. But that voice haunted his sleep. And lately, it had started saying new things. Remember. 2. On the 5th day of orbit, Oren was assigned to deliver classified cargo to a central Ethery outpost, the kind of job that required special clearance. Oddly, the authorization came with little resistance. Even stranger, his access chip recognized the locks before he'd even reached for them. The storage bay opened with a hiss of pressure. Inside was a single crate. And a file embedded in its lock panel. Confidential, eyes only, Prince Kalen record, subject Oren Dill. He stared at it, not breathing. Prince, Kalen. He tapped the file. Images flickered. A recording began. An ethery voice, smooth and aching. If you're hearing this, then they failed to erase you completely. Pause. Oren, it's me. Kalen. You don't remember, I know. The bond was too dangerous. They said it could destroy the throne if they let it survive. So they tore it out of you. Oren gripped the crate's edge, knuckles white. They took you from me, the voice said. But I couldn't let you go entirely. I left this here, in the hope that your soul would find its way back. Silence. Then. Come to Velatri. Go to the archive tower. Find the sealed chamber under the 13th floor. The rest of us, is there. The message ended. Oren sank to the floor, lungs burning. His fingers trembled. His past wasn't lost. It had been stolen. 3. It took him 3 days to reach Velatri. 3 days of encrypted jumps, underground routes, and forged permits. When he finally arrived at the royal capital, he was almost arrested at the outer ring for unauthorized emotional signatures. The Ethery guards had upgraded their detection algorithms. Emotions weren't just dangerous anymore, they were treasonous if pointed at the wrong noble. But Oren didn't care. He had one name now, Kalen. And it felt like gravity in his bones. He found the archive tower during a thunderstorm. The rain fell in long silver lines, painting the air with static. The 13th floor was sealed, just like the message said. But there was a small reader embedded in the wall. When he placed his palm against it, the wall clicked open. He stepped inside. The chamber was small, round, lined with data spires. And in the center, a memory core. He reached for it. And everything returned. 4. He saw it all. Himself, Oren Dill, not a smuggler, but a royal guard. Sworn protector of Prince Kalen of the Fifth Moon Court. They had met during a diplomatic retreat. Kalen had been aloof, elegant, sharp-tongued. Oren had been steady, quiet, watching everything. It had started with stolen glances. Late-night conversations. Then, the gaze. Not a ceremonial one. A real one. They had bonded. A rare, unsanctioned soul match. But Kalen had been forbidden from forming such a tie. His political marriage had already been arranged. Their bond was illegal, a threat to a fragile alliance. The royal council had acted quickly. Oren was detained. Wiped. Erased. The bond severed. The prince had fought to stop it. Failed. And in secret, left behind a trail. So you'd remember, Kalen had whispered, last memory before darkness. Oren collapsed to his knees as the visions ended. His body shook with the weight of it all. Not grief. Recognition. 5. He found Kalen at dawn. Not in a palace. Not in a throne room. But in a hidden temple at the edge of the city, praying at an ancestral altar under a glass canopy of stars. The prince was older now. His silver robes shimmered with ceremonial weight. But his face was the same. Proud. Haunted. Beautiful. Oren stood in silence. Then spoke. You kept your promise. Kalen froze. Then turned. Their eyes met. And this time, no one looked away. Kalen stepped forward slowly, disbelief blooming into quiet hope. Oren. I remember everything. A long pause. And then. So do I. Kalen reached out, touching his face like a man touching a ghost. They told me you were gone. I was, Oren said. But you left a door open. They stood there, two men reassembled from fragments, breathing the same air again for the first time in years. And when they kissed, there was no ceremony. Only a vow. Not to forget. 6. It wasn't easy after that. The royal court demanded explanations. The council threatened sanctions. One member even moved to imprison Kalen for emotional treason. But the people, they whispered. They watched. They remembered the past week, the Empress's gaze bond, the broken traditions. The movement for truth, not just protocol. Oren and Kalen didn't run. They stood. Together. At the temple, again. This time in daylight. And Kalen spoke. I remember what they erased. And I forgive none of it. But I also do not hide. Oren took his hand, voice steady. They can erase names. But not truth. And this, he touched his chest, this is truth. The silence that followed was not condemnation. It was change. 7. They lived quietly after that. Not in a palace. Not in exile. Just in between. A house built near the edge of the city, where wind touched the trees and light soaked the garden every morning. They made tea. They argued about poetry. They learned to speak again, in ways the bond had once given them. And some nights, when the stars aligned just so, they sat on the roof and stared up together. They'll tell stories about us someday, Kalen said. They already are, Oren replied. And what do you think they'll say? Oren leaned in, voice low. That we were stolen. But we came back. Sela Marin was born in silence and raised in whispers. Her mother had once served the royal line, until a scandal had her stripped of title, memory cleansed, and exiled to Juventor, a cold ocean moon known only for its bio-healing schools and broken ex-nobles. Sela grew up learning to heal everything but herself. The Enclave called her gifted. She could pull fever from a body with one hand and pain from the heart with the other. But no one dared ask about her eyes, pale green, ringed faintly in gold. Only royalty were born with gold-ringed eyes. But Sela was not royal. At least, not publicly. 2. When the high seat summoned her, she knew it was no invitation. The letter arrived under her door. No seal. No return. Just a line of cold script. You are summoned to Virilith for service. Arrival expected within 2 cycles. Absence will be considered refusal. Refusal is treason. She folded the letter calmly, walked into the medical garden, and screamed into the soil. The matron found her still on her knees. You knew this day would come, the old woman said gently. I thought if I kept quiet, if I just healed, stayed useful. They don't forget bloodlines, Sela. Only delay them. 3. Virilith was silver spires and hard eyes. Sela stepped from the transport alone, unarmed, wearing the healer's robes she refused to remove. A steward met her at the gate, scanned her pulse signature, and guided her into a long corridor lined with ethery banners and surveillance orbs. She was taken directly to the crown hall. 12 figures waited at the end of the room. Nobles. Scholars. A voice of the council. And in the center, him. Eden Riol. Heir to the North Throne. Diplomat. Fighter. Strategist. The perfect successor. And her rival. She didn't know him, yet somehow she did. The air between them crackled. Their eyes met. And something inside her whispered, danger. 4. They explained the situation quickly, without ceremony. A ceremonial bond was to be formed. Not for love, not for romance, but for optics. The throne was unstable. The recent upheaval, Nail's bond, the Empress's defiance, Prince Kaelin's rebellion, had shaken the empire. The council needed a calming gesture. A symbol. A healer with hidden royal blood. A noble warrior with strategic influence. 2 legacies. 1 bond. Sela said nothing. Eden did. I don't want this, he said. The room stilled. I'll play the game, he added, but I won't pretend. The council grumbled. Sela stared at him. And thought, finally, someone honest. 5. Over the next week, they were housed in adjacent chambers at the Crown Estate. The rituals began, shared meals, psionic compatibility scans, even staged public appearances. But neither spoke much at first. Sela focused on the ceremonial duties. Eden remained distant, pacing the edge of every event like a soldier waiting for ambush. Until one night, in the rain garden, something changed. She found him leaning on the railing, staring at the sky. You hate this, she said quietly. Do I hide it that poorly? No, she smiled faintly. But you wear it better than I do. He turned to her. Why did you say yes? Because they didn't give me a no. He nodded. Then looked down. They say a bond creates unity. But what happens when 2 people inside it don't believe in the same world? Then maybe, Sela said softly, they build a new one. 6. That night, she dreamt of fire. The bond hall, aflame. The council fleeing. And Eden, hand in hers, laughing, not with joy, but freedom. She woke shaking. Then found him already in the garden again. You dreamt it too, he said before she could speak. How? Because we're already linked. But we haven't completed. Not formally, he stepped closer. But you and I, we don't need ceremony. They didn't touch. But something passed between them, like memory, like feeling, like storm. And then he whispered, "If you run, I'll follow." She swallowed. "What if I stay?" "Then I'll stay with you." 7. The rebellion began that morning. Not with weapons. Not with marches. With a message. They broadcast it from the tower at dawn, Sela and Eden side by side, eyes clear. "We were chosen to represent unity," Eden said. "But unity cannot be forced." "We were meant to perform a bond," Sela added, "but what we found is truth. And truth does not follow laws. It breaks them." Then they said it together. "We will not bond for optics. We will not love for tradition. We will choose." 8. Chaos. Arrests. Orders revoked. The council demanded silence. But the people, especially the healers, the students, the forgotten ex-nobles, rose instead. Riots? No. Celebrations. And one phrase echoed through the streets. "Let them choose." 9. Eden and Sela went into hiding, not as fugitives, but as fire starters. They lived in a converted monastery above the clouds of Myrev's third moon. Trained others. Healed the wounded. And wrote their story. Sometimes they fought. Sometimes they broke. But always, they returned to each other. Because theirs wasn't a bond written in law. It was written in ash. Reborn.